EVs. Either you love them or hate them. They're fast, high-tech, and marketed as the future. But here's the thing. I think EVs might become completely obsolete by 2050. Everywhere you look, EVs are portrayed as the perfect solution, supposedly better for the environment and the future of transportation. But the deeper you look, the more you start to question. Will EVs actually replace gas cars, or will they end up like hydrogen cars, forgotten in a few decades? It all comes down to 4 key factors, and in this video, I'm going to break down why I think EVs are a temporary trend and whether if they even have a future. We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. Before I start this video, make sure to subscribe to Durant. I make weekly videos about the automotive world, and if you enjoy these kind of videos, make sure to support and show love to the growing channel. Your support means so much to me, and this channel wouldn't be possible without you guys. Anyways, let's get back into the video. EVs aren't a new concept. Since the 1800s, electric vehicles have existed, but they have never dominated the market. Sure, there were a few concepts in early attempts, but nothing made a huge impact. That changed in the late 2000s when automakers started producing EVs for more mainstream consumers. As the 2010s went on, EVs became more common. They weren't groundbreaking, but they got the job done with decent range, reliability, and everyday utility. Tesla took off with its performance, Toyota stuck to hybrids and well-built EVs, and others followed. But not every EV was a success. Then came the 2020s. EV ranges improved, emissions were marketed as non-existent, and tech became a major selling point. But one of the biggest factors was the EV tax credit. Governments started charging discounts, perks, and even incentives to buy EVs instead of gas cars. Suddenly, automakers had a reason to flood the market with electric models. Want a discount for choosing a Tesla over a Ford? Done. In this example, Ford would want to make more EVs as well, and when incentives were offered to buy their cars over Kia, for example, then Kia would create electric models as well, not to get outsold. This created a major chain reaction, forcing brands to push more EVs into their lineups, and the next in line to do the same as well. Now, EVs are expected to make up 10% of all car sales by 2026. That might not sound like much, but when millions of them are sold every year, their presence are impossible to ignore. At this point, you might be wondering, how? How could EVs even remotely disappear at this point? The market gets bigger and bigger. Billions get poured to them every month, and on the surface, everything seems amazing. But here's the thing. That surface is just the tip of the iceberg on the current state of the American EV auto market. Like I said earlier, there are 4 main factors, and the first one has to do with technology. Technology in gas cars are simple. Bluetooth, a small touchscreen, backup cameras, useful but not overdone. But EVs, completely different story. Look at the Cadillac Escalade IQ. First of all, it costs $127,000. Sure, it's a Cadillac, but when you look inside, the thing has a giant wraparound screen that stretches across the entire dashboard. As if that wasn't enough, there's a second one below it, the size of an iPad. Still not enough? There's 2 more in the back for your rear passengers' entertainment, who probably already have a device to entertain themselves. No actual buttons, no climate dials, not even a real speedometer. Now imagine if this massive touchscreen breaks down in the middle of the road. Good luck knowing how fast you're going. And the worst part, opening the glove box requires the touchscreen. Yeah, there's an entire 3-minute tutorial just to open the glove box. Is it really that hard to just put a latch or button on it, like every other car since the 1920s? But no, Cadillac thinks this makes the car feel more futuristic by adding extra steps. And here's where it gets worse. Way worse. This opens the door to car subscriptions. There's nothing stopping Cadillac from making you pay $12 a month just to access your own glove box. Because, hey, if you could afford to drop 6 figures on an SUV that you'll replace in 10 years, then clearly you could afford to pay even more on top of it. At that point, I'd definitely But even with all these interior cameras, who knows? Maybe messing with your own car could get you in trouble. And it's not just Cadillac. Kia, Toyota, and even BMW are overloading technology on their EV models. If you think this is just tech evolving slowly over time, take a look at the 2010 BMW X5 and compare it to a 2020 model. For a 10-year gap, it looks like not much has changed besides the interior materials and dash screen. Now, the newer hybrid model only 5 years later? Yeah. The problem is, automakers keep adding pointless tech on top, selling EVs as this luxury experience no one asked for. And what happens when every car is just screens and high-tech crap everywhere? Eventually, EVs will become so overcomplicated and overpriced, they'll be out of reach for the average driver, making them switch back to gas. In conclusion, if it's an EV, car brands basically have to double the touchscreen display size and make everything overcomplicated. This is happening on some gas cars as well, but with EVs, it's way more of an issue. Next, let's talk about environmental concerns. It's one of the biggest reasons why people switch to EVs. You constantly hear that they're better for the planet and the future of sustainable transportation. But here's the thing, EVs are actually worse for the environment than gas cars. Sounds crazy, but stick with me. To power an EV, you need lithium-ion batteries, and mining lithium is a disaster. It takes an insane amount of labor, energy, and resources, and the process releases a ton of pollutants into the atmosphere and even ground. Not to mention, lithium itself is already pretty scarce. By 2050, we could have completely run out of it, and that's not even factoring in the massive, heavy EV batteries automakers are cranking out. And let's not forget, these batteries just don't appear out of thin air. They have to be manufactured in enormous factories that pollute pollution, alongside EVs assembled with rare and expensive components, and packed with all that unnecessary over-the-top tech I mentioned earlier. Suddenly, a gas-powered car seems a whole lot more eco-friendly. And yet, despite all this, the US government is handing out $7,500 tax credits like candy just to get people to buy EVs. Meanwhile, every single new gas car sold gets slapped with emissions and regulations and restrictions. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? And let's talk about what happens if we all switch to EVs by 2035, assuming that ridiculous ban happens. Imagine the absolute disaster our power grid would become when millions of people plug in their EVs every night. Blackouts, electricity shortages, skyrocketing energy costs. Yeah, that's gonna work out real well. In conclusion, at this rate, EV emissions will eventually surpass those of gas cars, and by then, the damage will have already been done. If you really think about it, automakers are likely pushing EVs not because they're just better. It's because they help them dodge emission regulations. Since EVs don't have to go through the same emissions testing as gas cars, they'll get a free pass. Once the public realizes EVs aren't the clean, green solution they were promised to be, there will be backlash. And at that point, EVs will lose their main selling point, and the very reason they were pushed so hard in the first place will make them fall apart. You know what else can't fall apart? Gas cars. Which brings me to my next point. Like I said, many states in the US want to ban gas cars by 2035, and some places in Europe want to do it even earlier. You might be wondering, how? Exactly. No matter how much EVs are pushed onto customers, it's just not realistic. People think EVs were designed to lead us into some new automotive era, but we are far from that. Think about how reliable and practical the internal combustion engine really is. Sure, EV batteries might make a car last longer or make it stupidly fast and reliable, but at what cost? Take pickup trucks, for example. EVs struggle to tow anything without absolutely obliterating their range. Remember the towing capacity Tesla originally promised for the Cybertruck? First, it was supposed to tow 14,000 pounds, and now it's down to 11,000. And even then, it can't outdo gas-powered trucks from decades ago. EV trucks are basically glorified showpieces. They look cool on paper, but put them to real work, and suddenly you're looking for the nearest charging station before you even leave the driveway. And don't even get me started on cold weather. I live in a place where it sometimes drops below zero for half the year. EVs do not handle that well. You ever try to start a Tesla in negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit? It's a fun game of, will my car even turn on today? Meanwhile, gas cars just start up and go, no problem. In semi-trucks, if you think electric semis are the future, I don't even know what to say. They barely move when towing anything heavy, unless of course you're rolling it down a hill. The thing is, a ton of people will never replace their gas cars with electric ones. But even if this law goes through, you won't have a choice. You have to buy an EV because gas cars won't even be sold anymore. Can you believe that? Not only will they take away your ability to buy a normal, reliable car, but they'll force you in a tech-filled, overcomplicated, overpriced electric box on wheels. And speaking of technology, remember how EVs are packed with all this self-driving and connected features? Yeah, that means your car could literally be hacked. Imagine there's World War III and some hacker from Russia decides to take control of your car remotely. Next thing you know, your EV is going full speed towards you, and you can't do a thing about it. I know that sounds extreme, but if World War III breaks out, what would you rather be in? A 1999 Ford Explorer or a 2025 Rivian R1S? Exactly. Look, replacing every gas car isn't as easy as these lawmakers think. Imagine a massive city filled with regular buildings. Then one day, people decide that only smart buildings should exist. Do you expect them to demolish every single skyscraper and rebuild from scratch? No. That's exactly what's happening with EVs. They could coexist with gas cars as an alternative, but instead, we're expecting to throw away a $250 billion industry and start from square one. And let me make one thing clear. I don't care how much the government taxes me or bribes me to switch to an EV. I'm not doing it. Because the biggest problem with EVs, they lack a soul. Which brings me to my next and final point. Every gas-powered car, from the cheapest Toyota to the most expensive supercar, has personality, character, and emotion. EVs, they're just lifeless appliances on wheels. When you drive one, there's nothing to connect it with. No mechanical feedback, no real sense of involvement. Everything is artificial. The power delivery is instant, sure, but it's smooth to the point of being lifeless. There's no build-up, no anticipation, just an immediate surge of torque that feels more like flipping a switch than actually driving. And then there's a sound, or a complete lack of it. A gas engine gives you something to engage with. An EV, just silence, or worse, some fake whirring noise pumped through speakers in the back. Even the way they handle feels disconnected. The steering wheel is light and over-assisted. The brakes rely on regeneration so they never feel natural, and there's no real interaction with the drivetrain since there are no gears to work with. You're not driving the car, you're just operating it. And then there's the design. Have you noticed how EVs all look the same? There's no personality, no unique styling that makes them stand out. Aerodynamics and efficiency have taken over, and as a result, we're stuck with these soulless blobs that all blend together. Take a classic muscle car, a JDM icon, or even a quirky 90s hatchback, each having their own distinct look, something that makes it special in its own way. EVs, they're either trying too hard to look futuristic, or they just end up looking like a melted bar of soap. And what happens to car culture? Car enthusiasts love to modify their cars, to tweak and tune them to their liking. EVs kill that entirely. You can't swap out an exhaust, upgrade a turbo, or even do something as simple as tune without running into software restrictions. Everything is locked behind manufacturer controls, meaning even if you wanted to mod your EV, the automaker could shut it down remotely. Then there's motorsports. If gas cars get phased out, what will happen to racing? NASCAR, Formula One, rally, drag racing, will all that just be a thing of the past? Will we be forced to watch silent EVs buzzing around the track with fake engine noise piped in through the speakers for immersion? It's depressing to even think about. In car movies, imagine Fast and Furious with Teslas and Rivians. No engine revs, no shifting, just a bunch of silent cars zipping around and Vin Diesel talking about family over a charging station. Car meets? What's the point when every car is just another software-locked, tech-heavy appliance? The whole idea of being a car enthusiast is at risk of disappearing. EVs aren't just changing what we drive, they're changing car culture itself. And if things keep going this way, the passion, the creativity, and the thrill of driving could become just another thing in the past. The lack of driving engagement, personal expression through modifications, and the loss of car culture will make people less interested in buying EVs, as they don't offer the excitement and individuality that traditional cars do. Is a novelty worse off when consumers realize they've been sold a soulless, restrictive experience? EVs could eventually become obsolete, replaced by a shift back to more interactive and customizable vehicles. In conclusion, the overwhelming amount of tech, environmental concerns, and the irreplaceable nature of gas cars, along with the lack of a true driving experience, could lead to EVs becoming a failure in the long run. For now, we don't need to worry about gas cars disappearing anytime soon. Only time will tell where EVs truly fit into the future of driving. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and remember people, drive safe, drive smart, but most importantly, drive something worth talking about. See you in the next one.